Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 265, Address Unknown. The episode begins with Ash and the gang continuing to make their way up Mount Silver after being shown the path to the Pokemon Preservation Area by Satchel last episode, still obviously with the mission of returning Larvitar there, since it was its birthplace. Speaking of Larvitar, it was still sleeping in Ash's backpack, and woke up, perhaps sensing something in the sky. Pikachu and Togepi spotted something in the sky as well, as they were walking up the trail. So they looked up into the sky, leaving Ash, Misty, and Brock to look up into the sky as well, wondering what the Pokemon sensed. It was then revealed that what they had sensed was a ripple in the sky that had appeared, that had specifically created a dark hole in the sky. Just then, a Pokemon fell from the hole and hit Misty straight on the head, knocking her down to the ground, leading Ash and Brock to hurriedly check if Misty was alright. When Misty confirmed, Ash and Brock turned their attention to the Pokemon with Misty still down, and saw that it had bounced off Misty into the dirt next to her. Pikachu, Togepi, and Larvitar were already curiously examining it, but when Brock and Ash got there, Brock initially recognized it as an unknown. No, not an unknown Pokemon, the literal Pokemon named Unknown, and Ash used his Pokedex to confirm this and learn more about it. The Pokedex added that the Unknown were thought to potentially come from a different world, including one that they may have created. And Ash and Brock believed this to be true, believing that the hole in the sky that had appeared was a gateway from another world, and when they looked up into the sky to look at this hole, they saw that it had now disappeared. Ash was disappointed by this, as now they had no way to find out what this weird world that Unknown had came from was. Ash tries to examine the Unknown just by holding it, and feels that it was unusually hot, coming to the conclusion that the Unknown was probably sick and had a fever. Just then, Misty wakes up, and somehow knows about what the Unknown's name was, and that it came from a different world, despite her just being passed out, and she shouldn't have been able to hear anything the Pokedex or Brock and Ash said. Ash and Brock are also confused when Misty adds that not only was Unknown sick, but it was also upset for getting separated from its friends. Brock questioned how Misty could know something like this, leading Misty to explain that when the Unknown hit her head, for a split second, she felt like she was reading its thoughts, and that she saw an indescribable dimension, indicating that yes, Unknown was from another world, and there were other Unknown there, and it got separated from them. Misty tries her best to describe what the indescribable Unknown world looked like, to help out Ash and Brock with visualizing it, but it really was just too hard to describe, so this left Ash immensely confused as to what Misty was talking about, along with Brock, who thought that Misty was just hallucinating and couldn't describe her hallucinations after she got knocked down. But Misty protests that she wasn't hallucinating, and she knew for a fact that whatever the world was, it was definitely Unknown's homeworld. Regardless of what Misty said, Ash and Brock were more concerned with treating the Unknown, realizing that it had a fever, so they had it laid down in a blanket as they set up camp. And thankfully, Unknown fell asleep and was able to get a good long rest as Larvitar, Togepi, Pikachu, and Ash and the gang watched. Ash and the gang felt that Unknown resting wouldn't be enough though, and really wished that they could go to a Pokemon Center and have Nurse Joy heal it professionally, but they were too far away from one. So they decided to improve their own care for Unknown, as they also pulled a cloth out of Brock's backpack and wet it using some water, and then put it on Unknown to help with its fever. Although the wet towel would quickly get displaced and fall off, though Larvitar would fix it as best he could, showing that Larvitar and Unknown were getting along well for some reason, even though Unknown was unconscious. As Ash and the gang, Pikachu, and Larvitar watch over Unknown, night eventually falls, and Ash and the gang focus their efforts on setting up a fire to keep themselves warm, although make sure not to put the fire too heavily on Unknown to not increase its fever. And Ash and the gang then continue to deliberate on where Unknown came from, when Brock recites a rumor that he had heard about Unknown, which was that Unknown could communicate telepathically with humans, suggesting that that's what Unknown did when it hit Misty, and why Misty could see into its mind. Having come to the conclusion that Misty wasn't lying after all, Ash realized this as well, because he trusted Brock's intuition, and knew that this meant that the Unknown was separated from its friends, and away from its home, so he wanted to help Unknown get back home, but Brock explains that that could be very hard, as no one knows exactly where the Unknown came from, and Misty couldn't be of any help, since she wasn't able to describe it. Although Brock did remember a theory he had read from some scientists that claimed that the Unknown were from their own dimension, known as the Unknown Dimension, although it's not like Ash and the gang had any way of getting there, even if this was true, so they decided to not worry themselves with where the Unknown came from for now, as it was getting too stressful, and they wanted to focus on the Unknown's recovery, since it had to be recovered before they could find its home anyways. When thankfully, Unknown woke up and got out of its blanket. Ash was excited, hoping that this meant the Unknown was feeling better, as he assured it that they would help it get back to its other Unknown friends, no matter what, thinking that Unknown was ready to go. Misty warned Ash that he shouldn't make promises that he couldn't keep, since they didn't know where Unknown was from, but Ash didn't want to worry the Unknown, as he just ignored Misty and assured Unknown once again that he would take it back home and help it find its friends. However, before Ash and the gang could officially set off with the Unknown, it quickly fell back into its blanket, falling asleep again, since it still wasn't 100% and needed more rest. Larvitar takes action as it tucks Unknown back in and puts the cold cloth over its head, taking care of it, leading Ash and the gang to come to the conclusion that Larvitar must be taking care of Unknown because it knew what Unknown felt like, being separated from its friends and family like Larvitar was, because it was separated from them before it was even born. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang from a cliff when Jessie took interest in the Unknown that was with them, and soon hears Ash and the gang talking about it, although they didn't know that it was called Unknown, so they weren't sure if the Pokemon was named Unknown, or if Ash and the gang were talking about how they didn't know the Pokemon's name. Regardless, though, since Team Rocket had never seen this Pokemon, they came to the conclusion that it must have been rare as fuck, also hearing that it could have been from a different world, so they agreed that it was definitely worth stealing, and proceed to plan a way to steal it. Knowing that they'll have to come up at just the right moment and ambush Ash and the gang. Their plan was then interrupted, though, as Wobbuffet forcibly popped up its Pokeball, leading Jesse to recall it. The sun eventually rises, as Ash and the gang had fallen asleep by the fire, which had since gone out, and Larvitar soon woke Ash and the gang up. Ash questioned why Larvitar did this, only to see that Larvitar was relatively excited because it saw that its new friend, Unknown, was all healthy and cheerful, having risen out of the blanket and started floating around, even going as far as to dance. Particularly dancing around Larvitar and Pikachu, very happy that they had helped it. While Larvitar was extremely happy that Unknown was just better. Misty tried her best to finally get on Larvitar's good side, as she complimented it on taking care of the Unknown all night, sacrificing sleep to do so. Larvitar didn't accept Misty's compliments, though, as it was still nervous around her, and proceeded to use Harden, trying to tuck itself into a ball so that Misty couldn't see it. Refusing to move, even when Unknown danced around it, almost knocking it over, forcing Pikachu to push Larvitar as soft as he could, a bit farther away from the Unknown, so that they didn't bash into each other. Brock knew that Larvitar still must feel uneasy around most humans, although Ash retorted that Larvitar was just uncomfortable with Misty, stating that Misty just shouldn't bother talking to it and risk scaring it. So, Misty obliges, walking away from Larvitar, leading Larvitar to relax, sighing with relief even more when he noticed that his new friend Unknown was still by him, and also apparently heard the Unknown thank him for helping it, as well as float very close to Larvitar, trying to comfort it from the ordeal that it just had, leading Brock to suggest that Unknown was now wanting to take care of Larvitar as a reward for Larvitar taking care of him. Ash and the gang were very happy to see that Larvitar and Unknown were becoming friends and starting to play with each other, very happy that Larvitar managed to get any new friend at all, when suddenly this happy moment was interrupted by Team Rocket as they appeared on a cliff. Meowth eagerly greets Ash and the gang and tells Team Rocket to do their motto so they could explain their plan. But Jesse and James explain their plan without doing their motto first, being to capture the Unknown. Meowth reminds Jesse and James angrily that they had forgotten to do their motto, leading Jesse and James to explain that they were tired as fuck, and that was their excuse, as they were exhausted and couldn't remember to do their motto, or they barely even had energy to capture the Unknown anyways. So, this led Meowth to suggest that Team Rocket do their motto to wake themselves up. So, Team Rocket did their motto, also doing a wake-up routine while doing so, leaving Ash and the gang more surprised at Team Rocket's unpreparedness, as opposed to them showing up out of nowhere, because they showed up out of nowhere all the time, but they always seemed to be prepared for a plan. Not this time, though, leading Ash to state that it must have been a tough night for Team Rocket, probably spying on them the whole time. As while Team Rocket did their motto, they did their morning wake-up routine, making them slowly gain energy as they said the motto faster and faster, having started saying it extremely tiredly and slowly. Eventually, the motto and morning routine were completed, with Team Rocket brushing their teeth, washing their face, and doing some mild exercises, allowing Team Rocket to turn their attention back to their plan as they remind Ash and the gang that they were going to steal the Unknown. However, Ash and the gang, along with especially Larvitar, stood in the Unknown's way, declaring that they would not let Team Rocket take the Unknown. This led Team Rocket to laugh as they went to send out their Arbok and Weezing to battle Ash and the gang, along with Jesse's Wobbuffet, but only managed to have Wobbuffet out as it was already out of its Pokeball, and Larvitar had used Hidden Power to levitate Weezing and Arbok's Pokeballs and sent them back into Team Rocket's pockets. However, Jessie didn't care about this, as she knew that her Wobbuffet would be enough to defeat Larvitar, as she ordered it to use Counter to reflect the attack back, sending the Hidden Power back at Larvitar and Ash and the gang. Now double the power, because Wobbuffet's Counter was super good now, since Wobbuffet had been training it. Wobbuffet still wasn't powerful enough to stop the Unknown, apparently, though, because before the Hidden Power could make contact with Ash and the gang and Larvitar, Unknown suddenly started glowing brightly, creating a glowing energy shield around itself to save Ash and the gang, especially Larvitar. So, when the Hidden Power makes contact with the energy shield, it caused a huge explosion, which sent Team Rocket blasting off, and caused a whole bunch of smoke. When the smoke cleared, though, it was revealed that Team Rocket were apparently not the only ones to blast off, as there was no one left at the campsite. No Ash and the gang, none of their Pokemon, and no Unknown. Well, it turned out that Ash and the gang and their Pokemon and Unknown were not blasted off, as we found out where they truly had ended up when Ash eventually woke up, noticing that he wasn't at the campsite, but instead he was sitting on top of what appeared to be a giant green eggshell, which was floating in a green void full of other fragments of green eggshells. Ash noticed that the eggs somewhat resembled Larvitar's, and questioned what this green void was, only to develop a question that was more important to him, being where the fuck his friends, especially Pikachu, were. So, he calls out for Misty, Brock, Pikachu, and Larvitar, looking around the void. And as if on cue, Brock and Misty arrive, also floating on pieces of green eggshells, although none of the Pokemon were anywhere to be found, including Misty's Togepi as well. Ash and the gang soon get back to questioning where the fuck they were and what this void was, leading Brock to state his theory that this must have been another dimension, specifically a dimension that was related to the Unknown, as right before Wobbuffet's counterattack, Unknown had started glowing, which might have been a defense mechanism, which threw them into a different dimension to protect them. However, Misty somewhat doubted this, as she thought that the unknown only had access to one other dimension, being their homeworld, and this place definitely didn't resemble the indescribable homeworld that she had saw earlier, and she knew that. Just then, Ash and the gang's thoughts were interrupted by loud, earthquake-like footsteps, which seemed to be getting closer, as Misty then spotted a huge figure approaching in the distance. It initially appeared as a shadow, but when the figure got closer to them, Ash and the gang were extremely surprised, as the figure was revealed to be Pikachu, now many times bigger than normal, being like fucking 20 times bigger than Ash and the gang. Togepi soon came running after Pikachu as well, also being multiple times bigger than normal, and once it spotted Ash and the gang, it tried to run up to them and give them a hug, unaware that it was super big now. Fortunately though, before Togepi could crush Ash and the gang, Pikachu was able to calm Ash and the gang down, as it caught Togepi inside of its tail in a wrap formation similar to Arbok. Although it wasn't painful for Togepi, he just did it to restrain it. Ash and the gang were very happy to have Pikachu and Togepi back, regardless of their size, but they noticed that Larvitar was still nowhere to be found, and were worried about it, so they proceeded to hop on their giant Pokémon, with Brock and Ash hopping on Pikachu, and Misty hopping on Togepi, as they rode them around the void, searching for Larvitar, calling out for it as they examined the area, with Brock taking immense interest in the area. Just then, two pairs of yellow horns stick out of the ground, materializing from out of nowhere as they then lift Ash and the gang up into the air, and they hear a song which Misty recognized as the Electabuzz baseball team theme song that they always heard Casey sing. This causes Ash and the gang to recognize the horns that had just lifted them up as Elekid's, and see several more pairs of horns float around them. Just then, even though Ash and the gang were extremely weirded out by what they had already saw, they began to become even more confused as a flame then hit them all, engulfing them, also materializing from nowhere. Ash and Brock run around in pain, because, they were just hit by fire, so they expected pain, but much to their surprise, the flames didn't seem hot at all, and they weren't in pain. The non-hot flames then form a ring of fire, which a Magby appears from, and looks at everyone for a moment before shooting a flamethrower at them, in addition to a fire spin. The Magby and the flames then entirely disappear, just as the Elekid horns had disappeared before, and some Shelder, along with several Slowking crowns, as a result of Slowking evolving with the King's Rock, take their place. This makes Ash and the gang realize that all of these Pokemon that they had been seeing were Pokemon that they had just encountered a few episodes prior, as we just had the Slowking episode, we just had the episode with Casey and the Elekid, and we just had the episode with Satchel and his Magby. This leads Ash and the gang to come to the conclusion that this wasn't the Unknown's homeworld, necessarily, but rather a dimension that the Unknown was able to contact humans through by accessing their memories. Essentially, this was Unknown's way of communicating with Ash and the gang. Their theory of this dimension being linked to memories was solidified as some actual Slowking then showed up and toppled on Ash and the gang. And then a very huge Slowking appeared and opened its mouth wide open, swallowing Ash and the gang. As Ash and the gang were sent down the huge Slowking's throat, they passed out, and the next thing they saw when they awoke was that they were back in the area with all of the Larvitar eggs that they had started at the beginning of the dimension. Although they were clearly a little bit farther in the original place, as it now had random trees with eggshells as leaves. The giant Pikachu then notices a giant egg and leads everyone to it, smack in the middle of the area. Pikachu then goes down on all fours, allowing Ash and Brock to climb off of his head, and Misty climbs off Togepi. And they then observe this giant egg and see that it had a whole bunch of small, glowing cracks. Ash and the gang look inside these cracks, and Ash sees himself inside of it, fully colored. When Misty and Brock look into other cracks, they see themselves as well, but Brock and Misty were in black and white, not colored. Just then, the black and white image of Misty begins to walk closer and try and talk. However, Misty's image suddenly stops and disappears, leaving TV static in its place. This leads Brock to come up with a theory, explaining that the reason why they couldn't find Larvitar was because they were currently in Larvitar's memories, citing that they had just encountered a Magby, Elekid, and a Slowking, Pokemon that Larvitar had encountered, along with Ash and the gang. As for the images of Ash, Brock, and Misty, Brock hypothesized that the reason why Ash's was in color was because Larvitar trusted Ash, and he didn't trust Brock and Misty, so that was why their images were grayed out. And the reason why Misty's image disappeared when it tried to approach was because Larvitar would always close its eyes and start screeching whenever Misty approached, so he didn't have a memory of Misty getting close to it. Ash understood why they couldn't find Larvitar inside of its own memories, but he didn't understand why they couldn't find Unknown, leading Brock to state that Unknown's mind must have merged with Larvitar's mind, which was in turn what caused this whole dimension to exist in the first place, because Unknown was using its power to create dimensions. Also stating that the huge energy blast that Unknown had unleashed when it made contact with Wobbuffet's counter must have caused this dimension to be created. It must have essentially been the final straw. So, Ash came to the conclusion that the Unknown must have created this dimension to save Ash and the gang from the explosion, but Brock questioned why the Unknown would create a world like this based on Larvitar's memories, and why there were so many big eggs involved, because that shouldn't have been a part of Larvitar's memories. Ash wondered about the eggs as well, so he went to investigate them, only to find a black crystal stuck inside the egg. He tried to examine it by touching it, but he got pulled inside the crystal as a result. Ash tried to escape before he was fully pulled in, but the crystal seemed to unleash some wind, as the wind was strong enough to pull him in. Misty and Brock tried their best to grab Ash and stop him from going in, but as a result, they got pulled in as well. Pikachu and Togepi tried to help to pulling all three of them out, but they met the same fate as they were sucked into the black crystal, despite their huge size. allowing no one to be rescued, as everyone falls through a dark space the same color as the dark crystal and land on a hard surface, as Ash and the gang and Pikachu and Togepi all get up, having reunited, and Ash and the gang realize that Pikachu and Togepi have now returned back to their actual sizes, much to Ash and the gang's delight, as they were worried that the Pokemon would be stuck like that forever. Ash happily hugs Pikachu, and Misty happily hugs Togepi, as Brock observes the surroundings and sees that they were on a purple floor with blue skies of some sort. The happiness was then cut short, though, as a mech, seemingly one like criminals would drive, such as Team Rocket, showed up out of nowhere and began approaching Ash and the gang, as it then stuck out robotic claws and its fingers extended, turning into branches the same color as the black crystal, indicating that they were also part of this black crystal. And then these branches proceed to surround Ash and the gang, trapping them inside in a web-like form. This surprised Ash and the gang, as they expected the claws to grab them like claws usually did, but no, they were just surrounded, although they were still confused as to what was going on. Just then, Ash and the gang hear a voice that was preceded by the cry of Larvitar, as the voice then stated that it was scared. Just then, the mech's claws grab an egg, as black and white images of 3 men appear behind the mech, indicating that Larvitar remembered these men and he didn't like them. Also, Ash and the gang saw that one of the men was holding an egg that looked extremely like the one Larvitar had hatched from, even without its green coloring. This led Brock to realize that the reason why Larvitar didn't like these 3 men was because these 3 men must have been the poachers that stole Larvitar's egg from the Pokemon Preservation Center and Larvitar's mother, or whoever had birthed it. And Brock also realized that the poachers must have used the mech that they saw to capture Larvitar's egg, which in turn makes Brock think that they were seeing the moment that Larvitar was stolen as an egg firsthand, as they saw the poachers and the mech that they used to steal it. This theory was further confirmed as a sad and desperate sounding roar could be heard. And just then, the images of the poachers vanish, being replaced by a Tyranitar, which roared immensely loud, implying that the roar they had just heard had come from this Tyranitar. Just then, Ash and the gang hear a softer, even more desperate roar, which they identify as coming from Larvitar, as they hear it calling for its mother, which makes Misty realize that this Tyranitar that had appeared must have been Larvitar's mother, and Larvitar must have just recalled a memory of its mother, which was why the image of Tyranitar must have appeared in the first place. Just then, Larvitar must have thought of the poachers again, insinuating that the poachers and his mother were linked somehow, as the poachers arrived in their mech and fired multiple missiles at Tyranitar, causing it great pain as Tyranitar roared again. Ash and the gang were immensely frustrated and angered by this, as they couldn't stand to see a Pokemon hurt by poachers, but since it was only a memory, they could do nothing but watch as the missiles hit Tyranitar so hard that they tore a crack into Tyranitar's body, leaving a scar, permanently wounding Tyranitar. The memory then begins to disappear, indicating it was too painful for Larvitar, as both Tyranitar and all of the black crystal branches completely disappear, followed by the poachers and the mech as well. Even though these memories were painful for Larvitar, it clearly still wanted to experience them, to see its mother, but he couldn't, as it was just too fucking painful for them. So Larvitar's calls for its mother eventually disappeared as well, along with the memory, getting weaker and weaker first, since Larvitar had become more and more discouraged upon every failed call. As for Brock, he had finally pieced together Larvitar's past. He was taken by poachers when he was still an egg, although his mother Tyranitar tried to protect him, only to get injured herself as the poachers took Larvitar's egg away. And Brock also realized that the cruel treatment that the Tyranitar had received from humans must have been what made Larvitar distrust humans so much, even at birth, as it loved its mother even before it was born. Just then, Ash and the gang noticed a light in the distance, so they approached it and realized that the light was shaped like Larvitar. And this Larvitar light happened to be sleeping in midair. Despite this, Ash tried to run for it, thinking that this was the real Larvitar, just the way that it was portrayed in this dimension. But then, the black crystal branches return and trap Larvitar inside, surrounding it. But not before reaching out to Ash and pushing him back, preventing him from reaching Larvitar. Ash didn't want to give up though, as he tried to run closer to the entrapped Larvitar, but he was then blocked by the crystal branches yet again as they blocked his path, rising up out of nowhere, even forming an entire blockade just to stop Ash. Ash questioned where these branches kept coming from, leading Brock to suggest that the branches blocking Ash could have been symbolizing how Larvitar was trapped inside of its terrible memories, and no one was allowed to save it. And adds that the huge black crystal that Ash and the gang initially saw on the egg must have represented Larvitar's terrible memories surrounding its time as an egg, and now that Ash and the gang were inside this crystal, they were now trapped inside Larvitar's bad memories. Ash then saw Larvitar crying in sadness, petrified by its terrible memories, leading Ash to question why the black branches had appeared, thinking that Larvitar was in control of them, and thought that Larvitar obviously wouldn't want to trap itself in its memories. However, Ash soon realized that Larvitar wasn't in control of these black branches, as Larvitar was actually trying to push the branches that surrounded it away, trying to free itself from its terrible memories. Essentially, Larvitar didn't want to have PTSD from what had happened to it as an egg, but it couldn't help itself, and it wanted nothing more than to free itself from this PTSD. So, Ash did everything in his power, along with Brock and Misty, to encourage Larvitar to break through its bad memories, ensuring it that not all humans were bad, and not everything in life was as bad as what had happened to it as an egg. Also encouraging Larvitar to try and break the black branches. Ash realized that Larvitar's efforts were futile though, so he tried to go help it, but he still couldn't get past the black branch wall that was blocking his way, especially since even more black branches appeared coming out of the wall, creating an even bigger wall. Ash realized that if he was instructing Larvitar to try and break the branches, then he should just try and break the branches himself, as he had Pikachu use Thunderbolt, and it actually manages to break the branches blocking Ash's way, allowing Ash and Pikachu to run towards Larvitar, although they still had to try and dodge several more branches which were rising up from the ground, trying to stop Ash and Pikachu from reaching Larvitar, although they were successful, and Misty and Brock, being inspired by Ash's successful dodging, decided to follow Ash and Pikachu to Larvitar, successfully dodging as well. After a while of dodging, Ash and the gang were finally extremely close to Larvitar, but as Ash reached out to grab him, the black branches catch up to Ash and the gang and try to attack them. As Ash and the gang notice, the black branches completely wrap up Larvitar as well, making it disappear inside of them. Ash and the gang are able to escape their black branches with another one of Pikachu's Thunderbolts, but by the time Ash and the gang made it up to Larvitar, they realized that the black branches had entirely engulfed it, making it disappear. However, the black branches then disappeared, and a block of ice containing Larvitar appeared in their place. Ash initially didn't realize it was ice, and just thought it was pure crystal, similar to the black crystal branches, but when Ash felt it, he realized that it was actually both. It was the black crystal branches formed together to create a silver crystal container that was encased in ice for extra protection. Ash was determined to save Larvitar though, not wanting to give up, as he tried to crack the ice crystal to no avail. So he got the idea to try and forcibly get all of the bad memories out of Larvitar and replace them with solely good ones, as he tried to get Larvitar to remember all the happy and fun times they had together instead of its traumatic past. While Brock and Misty tried their best to remind Larvitar of all the nice things they had done to it, to try and get it to believe that not all humans were bad, including them, and not just Ash. Desperate for Larvitar to respect them as well. Ash, Misty, and Brock's pleas appeared to be working a little bit, as the crystal appeared to be getting a little weaker, allowing Ash to continue punching it and Pikachu to help him out by using Thunderbolt on it. This jolt of electricity made Larvitar get startled a little bit, coming out of its bad memories, as it opened up its eyes and the ice crystal began to crack, allowing Ash to deliver one final punch, completely shattering the crystal and freeing Larvitar, who appeared to be a lot less miserable as it happily jumped into Ash's arms. And just then, Ash and the gang appeared outside of the huge egg once again, back in the area of the dimension that they started in. The huge egg still had the black crystal wedged inside of it, but it quickly, completely vanished, leading Ash and the gang to come to the conclusion that Larvitar had finally become happy, thanks to Ash and the gang's words, and had gotten over all of its bad memories. And also seemingly got over its distrust for humans, as it didn't seem uncomfortable around Misty, Brock, or Ash. Yay! Just then, the huge egg starts glowing extremely brightly, and the glow eventually envelops the whole dimension, knocking Ash and the gang out, as they then come to outside of the dimension, and back in the real world at their campsite. The Unknown, who was the Unknown G, by the way, since there were Unknown resembling every single letter, and this one was G, was also by the campsite and greeted Ash and the gang, and Larvitar. Larvitar then thanks the Unknown for everything, revealing that Larvitar and Unknown must have talked about Larvitar's troubled past and how Larvitar had wanted to get over it, but it just couldn't. So Unknown suggested that he could help, and that's why he created this dimension of Larvitar's memories, finding the perfect opportunity to do so when they needed to escape Team Rocket, since that would help Larvitar get over its memories if it saw that Team Rocket had been stopped by the Unknown, since Team Rocket were similar to the poachers that had attacked Larvitar's mother. Ash, Misty, and Brock then assured Larvitar that it had no need to ever go back to those troubled memories, as they promised that nobody would ever hurt it again. Larvitar gratefully accepted Ash's assurance, but he was still hesitant with Misty and Brock, it seemed like, as it simply stood in front of them in Ash's arms, showing no reaction to them. So Misty and Brock thought that Larvitar still didn't like them and was about to use Harden again and screech out in fear, which made Misty and Brock scared. However, they were soon calmed down, as Larvitar didn't use Harden or Screech, and instead just smiled at Brock and Misty, as Brock realized that the reason why Larvitar was staring at them was because it was finally fully taking them in for the first time, as it had never been able to get a good look at them, because it would always cower away in fear. But now, thanks to it getting over its bad memories, it now trusted humans again. Yay! Although Brock did clarify that Larvitar wasn't stupid, and just because it trusted some humans didn't mean it would trust all of them. Like if it saw Team Rocket or those poachers again, it obviously still wouldn't like them. Anyways, Misty was immensely happy to finally see that Larvitar respected her, and put out her hand for Larvitar to shake, which Larvitar accepted, insinuating that Larvitar was now friends with Misty and Brock, just like it was Ash. The Unknown was very glad to see that he had helped Larvitar get over its bad memories, as Ash and the gang thanked it, just as Larvitar did, for all its help. Seeing that its job of helping Larvitar was done, Unknown then floated into the sky, as the same hole in the sky that it fell out of appeared again, as the Unknown had summoned it, and this time Ash and the gang were able to see what was beyond the hole in the sky, being the same world that Misty had saw before when Unknown initially ran into her, a dimension full of other Unknown, and the Unknown eagerly entered this different dimension to rejoin all of its friends, and the portal closed behind it in a flash of light. So now Unknown was gone, reunited with the other Unknown in their homeworld. Although not before Larvitar waved goodbye to the Unknown, immensely grateful for it, for helping it get over its bad memories. As Ash and the gang continued through Mount Silver to Larvitar's birthplace, Ash saw that Larvitar was saddened by Unknown's departure, so tried his best to comfort Larvitar, stating his belief that Unknown and Larvitar may see each other again, and stated that Larvitar should also be happy as it was about to return to its birthplace. Yay!